think E. Howard and Company in Boston is the oldest clock company in America. Well, that's pretty significant. So in addition to the engineering side and the beautiful aesthetics, it really is a part of American history.
They aimed at the high end of the market and they didn't disappoint. So a lot of these things are still hanging around.
The simplicity of what we think, how hard could it be to etch a dial, we're finding it's very complicated because very few companies do it nowadays, and yet they are unable to hold the tolerances or create the product that we're seeking to do, which in our mind is and was commonplace, but today isn't.
The movement of a clock in itself, to me, has always been a mechanical marvel. And I think very few people understand the precision it takes to build, quasi in the layman's language, the motor that drives the clock. I mean, it's one thing to make a wheel go around in circles, but it's a totally different deal to make a wheel go around in a circle in precise intervals. And so all the different parts that are involved of making that happen on a clock, that's a marvel.
It's always alive and fresh. We're not dealing with an old clock company. We're dealing with an American clock company that has an endless appetite for producing the best that can be produced.
Well, for one thing, you had to start with, you always have a person that starts the process that is really driven by perfection. In perfection, you cannot create a fine clock without really adhering to that principle. It has to be perfect. Otherwise, you will have a clock, but you will never have a clock or any timepiece that will be keeping time just perfect.
The E. Howard and Company clocks are the finest expression of the clockmaker's art. From guts to looks. 1/32 of an inch gap in any of the woodwork would look like the Grand Canyon to the people who make this.
Because everything that we do is still, it's old school, old fashioned, and yet with today's technology, we find it's hard to advance into the 21st century, knowing that these guys were doing this stuff 100 plus years ago, and they were doing it with, again, rudimentary equipment in our eyes, and yet they were doing it then. Why can't we do it today? So we want to be able to strive again to make that piece and get past the roadblocks that keep us from entering into the next stage of production. So it's always the challenge. So that's part of it, is it's the challenge in knowing that it can be done, but how can we do it in today's 21st century?
If you look in any price guide for antique clocks, E. Howard and Company clocks hold 10 times the value of anybody else. And the reason is because they're so well made and designed so well. They're beautiful to look at and they work perfectly well.
In the marketplace today, a lot of people make clocks. A lot of companies make pretty good clocks. I mean, such is the state of the art. There is no company that makes a clock like an E. Howard and Company clock. There are no replicas, there are no duplicates that come anywhere close to what the genuine E. Howard is. And it has this pedigree over time that drives anyone who's involved in the company to stay loyal to Edward Howard's view of how a good clock should be made and how to continue the improvements and continue stay truthful to the heritage of E. Howard.